Hello, this is Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. Today, I have the pleasure once again of speaking to Dieter Weiss of in4ma. Dieter, as you can see, is very alpine today with his mountain background. I love that. So, Dieter, Happy New Year. Good to catch up with you. Lots to talk about today.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Happy New Year to you as well. And yeah, it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
You
Listen,
look enlightened.
why, thank you very much, sir. Listen, you just released the fifth annual edition of your European EMS report. And I've been able to review it and I have some of the slides printed off to ask you about today. Once again, very impressive report, a lot of information, a lot of data within that. And I like the way you divide up the European market in different ways and consider it. So congratulations to you and the team on another great job there.
Thank you.
Tell me, how's that going? You push it out, you produce it, you're selling some. Are you getting? I'm assuming you're getting some good interest in the report.
Well, yeah, we unfortunately we were late this year for various reasons. Normally, the report should have been out by November. Already this year, we have been even working on Boxing Day and between Christmas and New Year. We worked on New Year's Eve. We worked on the 1st and 2nd of January, and finally on the 3rd of January, it was finished, and we started marketing it. I have to admit, even so, we had quite some good sales on it. Still, I think it could be better. Yeah, it was the best quantities we sold ever, but still, I have this problem that a lot of people want a lot of information, but nobody wants to pay for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even worse, I had one guy who discussed with me and mentioned the name of a competitor and says, "What differentiates you?" And I said, "Well, that's very insulting, this question, yeah, because we are not doing any Pareto analysis or so. We do real numbers, and by now everybody should know this that we have the best European numbers and." I was happy that a lot of companies from Scandinavia bought the report this year. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm
Well, and I
pretty
know
much
you had.
sure I still get some additional feedback from them.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's still early. I mean, I'm just looking at the calendar here. January 3rd, you finished. That's 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, right? So,
Yeah,
so it is still new. Those of you who are out there, I have seen it. Like I said, I would encourage you. I know you had sailed to at least one OEM here in the United States as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that I saw that come across through our posting on EMS Now of it. So I'm glad for that. Hopefully there's more in the future, Dita.
I
But
hope so. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a damn good report. So and you know I'm a big fan of the work you do. But let's talk about what you found out in the report. So let's start by maybe looking back at 2023. Um, how would you summarize kind of the state of the market at the end of 2023?
Well, there is several things happening. You know, we have been talking about this chip crisis for very long. We have been talking about the bullwhip effect. We have talked about this situation, and by the way, that is once again explained in detail in the report how the things develop. And if you look back at 2021, for example, we have seen an order intake 100% higher than the previous year, which means, and don't tell me that this was real market demand. No, that was a typical effect from the bullwhip, where all people started panicking. We don't get the chips. We need to place the orders now. And it was even accelerated by the EMS companies who said, if you don't immediately place orders for the next 2 years, we cannot guarantee that we can supply you. So everybody was going crazy, hammering orders out into the market, doing the same to the distributors and the semiconductor industry for those who bought direct with them. And looking at the numbers, and we have seen in 2021, we have seen a 23.8% increase in quantity, not in use, output with the semiconductor industry. Yeah, so that is nothing. See, the market never jumps. That is a very old rule. Yeah, and no matter what happens, it takes a while. So 2022 was a brilliant year for the EMS industry. They had two-digit growth rates, and we did those analysis that 1/3 of the revenue growth was for price increases, forwarding the extra cost from the distributors and the semiconductor industry, but 2/3 of it was quantity increase. Yeah. So even so, everybody was talking about the chip crisis. They all were able to increase quantities like hell. Yeah, and this continued into the first half of 23.
Mm-hmm.
But then it started not with the big ones, but with the small ones. It started to slow down. And in the second half of 23, we already saw that the smaller EMS companies were getting nervous, because they said, well, we don't know what we're going to do for the rest of the year. And what they gained in the first half, they lost in the second half. So if you look at back at 22, it was only 8.6% of all companies who report their numbers to us in this IPC in4ma annual survey. 8.6% had a lower revenue in 22 than in 21. So in the majority, everybody was gaining business in revenues. In 23, this changed again. Now, 25% of all companies have not been able to increase their revenues in 23 compared to 22. And those in the majority were smaller companies, and people were starting getting nervous at the end of the third quarter. And I got a lot of calls from people telling me, hey, actually, we don't know what to do in the first half of 2024. And this is a typical bullwhip effect. Yeah. Now, as everybody has filled the storage of the OEM companies, the stores are up, and starting in the first half of 23 already, the customers of the EMS already realized that there was no supply issue anymore, but instead there was an inventory issue now all of a sudden. And they started trying to cancel orders. They tried to defer orders back into 24. Yeah. At the same time, the EMS still had huge loads of inventory sitting on the shelves. Yeah. So this is the actual challenge at the moment. And now all of a sudden, the OEMs say we don't need anything in the first half because we still got enough. And as long as the market has not called the products off, we don't want you to supply us anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes, and see, I don't know whether all the communication is so proper that customers tell their suppliers, hey, we don't want something because our shelves are filled. Yeah. Some might just say, hey, we don't need anything anymore, which makes the EMS even more nervous because they think, well, Are they just phasing me out? Do they have a new supplier or what? Yeah, so there's a lot of nervosity in the market at the moment, and I see that for the simple reason that I receive many calls. I even receive invitations to board of directors meetings to try to explain the situations over there, and that is the present situation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if
but
I read that,
overall, still 23 overall on average. 23 will have again a two-digit growth rate.
Mhm.
Only not everybody.
Yeah, of course, not everybody. And so what I see, and I'm looking at one of the slides in front of me here, you had a nice growth both in uh, 21 to 22 and then the 22 to 23, right? And but what I hear you saying is moving forward into this year, 2024, there's some nervousness as to, whether that will be continued at the double digit level.
So will be not even close to double-digit level. I'm expecting a maximum of 4% growth rate for this year. And that is due to a very weak
Mhm.
first half of this year. And that cannot be compensated in the second half of this year. So yeah, this year will be weak, which
Okay.
means as well that people get even more nervous. Some of them still have not been able to convince their customers to pay for part of the inventory which is on the shelves. Yeah, and we all know stuff is not getting better by sitting on the shelves, and from the commercial side, there will have to be write-offs.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about tease out. I mean, that's the overall picture. Let's get into some of the weeds about what I've noticed, some of the trends within your data too. For example, I noticed you had a slide in the in the presentation, a foil as you call it, um, that showed the number of European OEMs doing EMS work.
Oh, you
Yeah.
got me on that. Yeah, I
Okay.
knew
Yeah.
you were.
Anyway,
I knew you were going to ask me tricky questions. Yes, yes. Let me tell you. Now, if there is a small OEM who does one or two jobs, yeah, and we're not talking about big business, yeah, I forget about that. But for example, if you have a big OEM, and I'm not mentioning names, but I could mention names. I'm not mentioning names, but there is a big OEM at Lake Constance who is doing electronics for other sister companies, but he does as well EMS work. Specifically, this company is doing very sophisticated electronics. Yeah, and at Lake Constance, we have a lot of aerospace and defense companies sitting.
Mm.
And this OEM does EMS work for those companies in the region of 5 million.
Oh,
And I can read that in the annual reports. I see that, and they name the figure. So I cannot just ignore 5 million.
right.
But I have a clear rule: if an OEM does less than 30% of his revenues in EMS, I only take the EMS part and add this to my numbers. Only if a company is doing substantial business in EMS, then I put it all in. And
Mm.
I think out of the 2,200 companies we have on our data bank, it is, I think, about 10 or 15% who as well do EMS work. And now, as I said, you get me on it. I don't have it in my head.
That's
It could
okay.
be between 8 or 10% of revenues, which are actually probably uh, own products they do.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, and I wrote that in the report as well, those companies have better profit margins.
Go figure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing I wanted to ask about is I noticed, and I've seen this in the news, and as I've traveled Europe the last 3 years with you, we've heard more about this, and you tease it out, and that is the European EMS companies with global facilities, right? So you have more
Yes.
EMS with facilities. I think you said there's like 50 of them, and I forget the number of total facilities. But what we're seeing is an
It's a
expansion out.
hundred. It's 102 or 112 facilities of, I think, 55 EMS companies.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me, that's interesting, right? Is what is
Yes.
driving that? Is that a lot of uh customer, European OEMs who are expanding into these other areas and now want to have the manufacturing there? Is it a total cost of outsourcing kind of analysis that's saying get something in region?
Mhm.
What is behind that, do you think?
Well, there are several things. There are, number one, companies who, in specific, are located somewhere in an area that they consider a low cost area. Companies who think that low cost in Eastern Europe is not low enough, and decide to, for example, to go to Sri Lanka or India, yeah, um, some even to China. But as we are talking more and more about sustainability, we are talking more about local for local business. For
Mhm.
example, I have a um, relatively small company with about 50, 60 million. He has a small factory in China as well. And all of that business he manufactures in China stays in China. And he actually was forced by his customer to set up this factory in China because his customer said, I need a local supply in China. Yeah. So that is one thing. The other thing is cost reduction. And then there is this very big thing about Tunisia. There is a lot of especially in French companies being located in Tunisia and manufacturing there for two reasons. Number one, for French companies, it's very easy because in Tunisia, second official language is French.
Mm.
That is number one. Number two is Tunisia still has an unemployment rate of 17%, so labor availability is there as well, and labor cost is very low as well. So that's why we have in present about 21 EMS companies there, and there is several OEM companies on top. And in actual fact, Tunisia has the highest SMT line density if you compare them, or if you consider Tunisia to be part of Europe. It is not, it's North Africa. But
Right.
if you looked at EMEA, to say so,
Yeah.
yeah, European, Middle East, North Africa, then the highest density is in Tunisia. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why, by the way, why we probably and hopefully will go to Tunisia together this year.
Yeah, we should probably tease that a bit. Dita and I are in discussions right now about touring over the summer, probably going down and spending a week in Tunisia and reporting out about the industry and the developments down there. And so look forward to that. I look forward to it. I think it's an exciting story within the industry right now, and more to come on that. But uh, I feel pretty confident we'll be able to pull that off. Um, Listen, the other issue related to this is, I'm struck by as I go through your various slides, I see, the number of companies um, globally that you've started to report kind of on that, and you're saying there are about 16,000 EMS globally, and that, that's what the top 100 own 84% of the market, and Europe has about 10% of the market. United States has about 13%. If you take the Americas as a whole, that jumps to almost 20%. Um, so I think that that's interesting. Still so many companies, and it makes the point that the 84% held by the top 100, that there's just a lot of small companies in this industry still.
Yeah.
Um, But which gets me to my next point, which is that of industry consolidation. It continues globally. We hear about stories in different places. I wanted to focus on Europe with you because I just went to the EMS Now website here before the interview today, and I just because I knew we've been posting various stories about consolidations, and I pulled up one, two, three, just five of them here already this year. There may be, and I'm probably missing some involving European-based EMS companies who are doing acquisitions, and it seems like the UK has been very active in that as well with companies within the UK. But kind of speak to the issue of consolidation within the industry in Europe. I know you have to be
Um,
careful with what you say because of, and we can mention that about your involvement in the NDAs that you're under, so you have to be very guarded. But just
yeah,
speak at a high level on this, if you would.
yeah. Well, number one, you know that, and we showed that in the seminars we have been holding, that there is a lot of consolidation going on. On average, we are talking about between 40 and 50 M&A deals every year in the EMS industry over here in Europe, which is not the end. If you look at this year we already had a very strong start in the M&A business. The biggest and probably the biggest one for 2024 is the acquisition of 59% of the Cartex shares from Prime Pulse bought by Contron. This is a very big deal, and it brings Contron close to the 2 billion in revenue mark. And if I stick to the existing rules, how we judge EMS companies, and Contron has some own embedded products as well. But we always said, and I mentioned it before, a company doing more than 30% of their revenues in EMS, we take their full revenues. And if I take Contron's full revenues now, okay, the deal just happened in January, so, but if I then look at the end of 2024, probably Contron will be the runner-up to Zollner. Yeah, so from a European base, yeah, will be the second biggest EMS company. Yeah, if we look at all of the companies which are operating out of Europe, we have to add Foxconn, we have to add Flex. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that brings Zollner to number 3, and it brings Contron to number 4 then at the end of 24.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you for that. I wasn't expecting the sizing piece, but that's excellent. The when I look at some of the names of the ones who or some in ones like Inition, right? We met with Inition, several times, and they do about one a year, right? Isn't that been their standard?
Yeah,
And
well, do you remember 2 years ago we were at their factory in Boras, and we
mhm,
met the head of the board of directors, Olle Hulteberg. He's a very nice guy, a very professional guy, who is as well heavily invested in this company. And a couple of years ago, by the way, they acquired in4ma, who was in the majority doing AC/DC converter business. And by the way, they have a factory in Tunisia as well, and one in Italy, and they bought that business, and they just issued a press release that they finalized the taking over of all the shares of this company and integrating it into Inition. Um, but when we were in Boras, Olle explained to us as well that he had this plan together with his CEO to take the profits of every year and look for a company to be bought and fit into the Inition structure. And you remember that I think that was 3 years ago. We were at the sheet metal fabrication factory of Inission in Estonia, in
Yep.
Tallinn. Yeah. By the way, this year I had a chance to visit this factory again. They have further automated. They have further invested in machinery. The factory is now run by a lady,
Mhm.
Nadezhda Demetyeva, and uh, we were able to visit with a small group of other EMS company. We were able to visit this factory. Very, very impressive. Yeah. So, Inission buys a factory more or less every year. That is uh, an unwritten rule. And this year in January, they bought Axe in Norway. So
Nor, yeah,
it's
yeah. Hey,
it's a very interesting strategy, and if I look at their share price, the share price is very stable as well.
yeah. And listen, the other one that just popped out to me on the list, just from what I looked at the press releases, it was Sycor, right? They've been on a very nice, I think they did one in the UK here, announced this year as well. They've been quite acquisitive over the last few years as well, and are building a nice, and we visited with them too a couple years back. So it's just, I mean, there's a lot of activity there. I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of activity. Um, I know you have to be careful with what you say, because you play somewhat of a role in in those types of transactions on a limited basis with some companies.
Yeah, well, um, uh, as I said, more or less sooner or later, even so I'm not actively either on the buyer side or on the seller side, um, both sides sooner or later come up to me and ask me for advice. And as long as it's not just free of charge advice they are looking for, I'm happy to help them and give them advice.
Good for
Um,
you.
but I'm quite often as well bound by NDA. So
Yeah.
um, I can only tell you at the moment there is about I think 15 to 18 EMS companies for sale. Um, not only um, age retirement or
Oh, yeah.
things similar to that. Some people are just wanting to get out of business. And then you have as well situation where investment companies, private equity companies have invested in a company and now feel it's the right time to cash in.
Yeah.
Um,
Good. Yeah, and I do want to, we should end this here. We've been talking for a while. I did note, I always like this isn't going to show, but your map of Europe and the number of EMS companies
yeah,
in the
which
various,
changes every day.
which changes. And that's what I was going to say. You were just in Spain and you said you discovered another decent sized EMS while you were down there. So, um,
Yeah, you meet people. Yeah, I was at the IPC Wintercom in Barcelona. Very useful meeting where the experts from the industry are discussing the updates of the IPC specification, which is very important to make sure that they keep up with the technology. And all these people meet there. And I'm not active in one of the committees anymore, but I have been about 40 years ago. Um, Dieter Bergmann Senior was those days running the IPCA 600 specification on printed circuit boards, and I attended meetings in 1984 on Long Island. So um it was interesting again to see this, and then you meet a lot of people and you chat. And then I asked one of the ladies about the Spanish EMS market, and we chatted about it. And the companies she mentioned, I had them all on my screen. But then all of a sudden, she mentioned a company which I wasn't sure about. So I looked it up on the internet, and it was a big Japanese company. It was not necessarily a pure EMS company. It was more a tier one for the automotive industry. Yeah, so that is something similar to Continental or so, or Bosch, not typical EMS companies which are in my file. But this company had a second factory in Malaga, and there you saw it on the homepage of this company, where the in specific mentioned as well. They do EMDS, electronic manufacturing and design services. So
Yep.
nothing to say about a company with 150 million in revenues.
Wow.
I didn't have them on the screen. So that can happen. Yeah.
Yep.
It's very unlikely that it happens, but it can happen. So I'm always saying that once in a while, once some of my competitors run around and say there is only 1,000 EMS companies in Europe. I'm sorry, totally wrong. Yeah. It's 2,200, and it could easily be 2,250.
Yeah. Good. Um, Listen, before I let you go, let's talk about the year ahead. We're launching 2024. I know you and I have a few events planned, but also you'll be coming to Apex this year. So people here in
Yes,
North
I will be at
America,
Apex.
you will be there, hanging out primarily, I guess, in the European uh,
Section.
section, but certainly
Yeah.
available if people want
Yeah,
to
there will
meet
be
with
a
you.
lot of Europeans coming to Apex this year. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll be there. You're doing your own event in Ulm,
Yes,
Germany.
on the 5th and 6th of June, as usual, by invitation only. It will be in German. It is dedicated for the EMS and PCB industry in the German-speaking countries. Last year, you were there. We had 110 attendees. This year, we expect even 140 to 150 attendees. So it's a good thing. I've been doing this for quite some time now, with some interruptions, but that's a good one. And then I will be attending the IPC EMS seminar, which this year in September will take place in Gdansk in Poland. I think it's the 25th or 26th of September.
Okay.
And then we're all heading to Electronica in Munich.
Yes, we are. And we'll talk. And in between there,
Oh,
as
and
we,
before I forget, we will, as we have been doing this the last 2 years, there will be an IPC EMS seminar again in the UK on the 13th of June in London. Yeah, you attended that last year as well.
yes,
Yeah,
I did.
it's a small seminar, but it is dedicated uh, for the EMS industry in the UK, a special service of IPC, and I think it's got a lot of very interesting and brilliant subjects.
Yeah, I think I still owe you for half of a ticket for the congestion tax when we drove into London one day, right? So, so
Well,
I'll see.
in actual fact, I got 3 tickets in the
Mm,
UK. Yeah.
mm.
Uh, one was for entering London downtown. I didn't know that was not allowed. The second thing I was able to clear, we passed a toll bridge, and I saw a big sign on the side of the road. But I would have to go into the internet and pay on the internet. I didn't know anything about that, so it costed me a fine, and the third one was for speeding.
Listen, I'll just end by saying, I'm glad it was just speeding tickets because there was a moment there in London. Remember the guy on the motorcycle got mad at you and chased after you because of the way you were driving? I thought Dieter was going to end up in jail somewhere in London that day, which would
Yeah.
have left me to the driving, but fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. So,
Yeah.
anyway, Dieter, it's always a pleasure. You are a wealth of information. You do a great service for the industry. I would just end by encouraging anybody who has not taken a look yet at the report that Dieter has just issued, to take a look at that. There's a press release and some coverage of it on EMS Now. We have it posted. You could go to his site, and there's a lot of good information. If you want to know about the EMS industry in Europe, this is a gentleman to speak to, and his report is the one that I would encourage you to purchase. So
Thank you.
no, I'm a big fan of yours. You know that. Dieter, I look forward to our ongoing collaborations this year. And yeah, it should be fun. And like I said, we've teased already. Hopefully we pull off Tunisia, because I think that would be a fantastic story to share with the industry. So
Yeah.
everybody stay tuned for that. If you have something in Tunisia you'd like us to visit, please reach out, because we're going to start that process here within the month. So okay, Dieter, alles gut. Stay healthy, stay well, and I look forward to catching up later this year.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.